Hello, everybody, and Losar Tashidelik. Uh, Happy Lunar New Year. Happy Losar. Um, I hope everyone's doing well. And welcome to Mahamudra for the People. This is somewhere around neighborhood of session number 35. Um, the count might be off a little bit because I've missed a couple sessions, but yeah, close to 35 weeks of Mahamudra. That's pretty good. Nice to see everybody streaming in from all over the place. Yeah. So, before I kind of go on teaching Ninth Karmapas, pointing out the Dharmakaya, I want to just again extend my greetings to everybody and ask that we take a moment before we do a little bit of practice to settle, to consider everything it is that brought us here together. Oh, hi, Anjana. So everything that has brought you here as a practitioner, all the blessings that have brought you here, as well as all the difficulties, all the hardship, the experience of all of the chaos that we feel sometimes in our mind, all of the ways that, not to sell my sweatshirt, but that we can be saints and all the ways that we can be sinners and all the ways that we can be in between. And take a moment to reflect on the preciousness of this human life we have, endowed with so many wonderful abilities, including the ability to practice, the ability to love and feel love, the ability to benefit others, and taking time to appreciate how difficult this is in a form that is very delicate, this human form. It's very easily damaged, very easily perishes, and one day will perish. Just kind of keeping that in the back of our mind, or in the fore, depending. In this particular moment, perhaps considering all of the people who have died since our last class. It's been 2 weeks. Imagine how many people have died. And then taking refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. Whether it be the historical Buddha or a cosmic Buddha like Vajradhara, Kutuzangpo. Dharma being the actual, whether it be the actual historical teachings of the historical Buddha or the visionary mystical teachings we find in the Vajrayana tradition. And with the Sangha, whether it be actual ordained Sangha or the Sangha, the community of Bodhisattvas, taking refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, taking refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. And perhaps in this moment generating as well the mind of enlightenment, this compassionate resolve to be able to be there to benefit other sentient beings. all sentient beings, those who are able to accept our help, as well as those with whom perhaps we have difficult relationships. Taking a moment to really understand and appreciate that it's the deep recognition of the way that we suffer that allows us the fuel, the focus, the resolve, and the ability to be able to be there for those who are suffering now, who may need assistance. And of course also considering the Lama, and the Yidam, and the Protector, through which great blessings rise in our practice. So all of these things come together in a way to help reinforce how precious our practice is. And it's something that's easy to take for granted. It's something that's easy to fall out of clear relationship with, turning it into a chore, turning it into something on a list of things that we must do or we feel we must do. And that's okay, but sometimes allowing that spark to ignite in our heart is most important. That spark that allows us to recognize the deep love and the deep peace, deep profundity of our practice. But that alone sometimes is enough to keep us coming back. That we may not need to feel pressured or scared or guilted into practice. Perhaps we can allow ourselves to recognize that all of the beauty, all of the meaning, and all of the power that our practice provides for us is reason enough. And so as we move into the session and as we move into a new year, according to the lunar calendar, perhaps we can allow this year to be a year of resting into the beauty, natural ease that the practice of meditation offers us. And maybe this year we can allow ourselves to put away ways that we judge ourselves or force ourselves to practice or hold ourselves ransom, hold our practice ransom because we want things to be a particular way or appear a particular way or sound a particular way. Let us take a moment to resolve to step into our practice in a way that's authentic and loving and restful and relaxed, free. Without judginess. Perhaps without a little bitchiness too. And as we've been doing, I can only speak for myself, and by a very imperfect way, we've been usually starting these sessions off with a meditation for about 12 or 14 minutes. And since today's Losar, let's allow this to be about 14 minutes. And again, just really kind of letting our practice be light and open. Allow yourself to seat yourself comfortably, bring your awareness to your body. If you can take up the points of meditation, allow yourself to sit with your legs crossed, hands on your knees or folded on your lap in meditation mudra, back straight to some extent. Shoulders open like the spread wings of a vulture, neck slightly hooked downward. Tongue resting naturally. Press gently against the palate of your mouth if you like. Make sure that your jaw is relaxed. Right? Don't worry about being tense. Just try and let that go. And for the purposes of this meditation, we tend to practice with our eyes open. So if you can do that, that's lovely. And then using whatever anchor it is that you've been using, whether it be your breath or an object directly in front of you, or a visualized object, or the nature of mind itself. Allow yourself to settle freely, naturally into the experience of mind. We'll do this for about 14 minutes. Okay, slowly bring yourself back to this meeting together. Allow yourself to just check in and see how you feel right now. Okay, and before I begin, I just want to let everyone know that if you have any questions, to go ahead and put them in the Ask a Question tab on the bottom of the page or your screen, as well as using the text box. Both are fine. And I do have to admit, my bookmark got moved over the past couple of weeks. So I just want to throw something out there, and if somebody could just answer. With respect to the last teaching on Vipassana, did I only do looking at the still mind, or did I do looking at the still mind and looking at the moving mind? If somebody could just remind me, that would be helpful. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Shane. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to offer a very brief kind of summation of what we've done. All of the recordings are available. Great, thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Ari. Thank you, Payne. I began the moving mind section. Conjuring a thought. All right. Yeah, no, I think I did do both. I'm going to have to go back. But I'm going to assume I did because I feel like I did. Only still mind. Uh-oh. Now we have a conundrum. Okay. Well, who are the friends on the wall? I have, my children are going through a huge artistic kind of flourishing. So this little drawing and actually that drawing are by my middle son, Winston. And then I have a couple different forms of Chinnamasta right here, and Chinnamasta in America. Okay, moving mind, and mostly Chinnamasta, and then Kali, and then another this really nice Kali print I picked up a long time ago in India, and I like it because she's so tender. Kali's usually not so tender, so that's who I keep around me. Yeah, the drawings are amazing, aren't they? Yeah, it's I know, they're fun. Oh, to be a child again. Yeah, the Kali is, she was somewhere else in the apartment. I actually got her in the village where Bokor Rinpoche's monastery was, probably about 20 years ago or something. And how do I see drawings? Oh, there's a drawing there. Yeah. So, in any event, that was the show and tell section of this teaching. Okay, so I do believe that I did do looking at the moving mind. But maybe what I will do is just kind of refresh so that everybody can have a kind of clear idea. I did actually. I will give everybody the link to where to purchase this text from, but I will do it at the end of the month because it can't be purchased without receiving pointing out instructions. And I received a request for pointing out instructions. And so I'm going to try and weave those into the retreat that I'm offering at the end of this month as part of the last teaching session that I do. And then I can't make a promise that those pointing out instructions will be any good, but you will have received them, and then with that you'll be able to order this text from Nalanda Translation Committee. And I can provide the link for that. So, okay, so again, this text has been. Oh, okay. There's another question. This is from Travis. This may be Buddhism 101, and the answer may be something like a fifth skandha or intrinsic awareness or something. But what's the deal with the inner voice, which I can manipulate to say Om Mani Padme Hum or Cogito Ergo Sum or whatever? The thing that I'm using to formulate this question. What the heck is this ability? Which is the most compelling example of a self in my experience. It is easier to treat thought as passing clouds when they arise by themselves, but this I can make them. Well, so this intrinsic awareness piece, right? So the mind that arises as it does, right? And there can be thought activity, there can be bodily sensation. We as kind of Western people, kind of when we think of Buddhism, sometimes all we do is think about thought activity, right? And so as a result, it becomes very heady. However, when we look at the tradition, what might be called thought activity tends to include kind of emotional response as well, kleshas, etc. So the inner voice, right, or this idea of this identity. Right? So when our practice becomes a little bit more stable, we can rest into wow, you guys have similar thoughts. So what is mantra recitation? I guess we could ask what the question is. And then what is the thing that recognizes thought? I think Shane was the person who asked 2 weeks ago if there's any difference between mind and awareness and space. And so the question then becomes, what is the relationship between mind and awareness? And of course, space. So mind, as we commonly experience it, is the quote-unquote thing, right? The experience of thought and emotion, Right? So the emotion aspect are like our kleshas, um, the arising of jealousy, the arising of anger, the arising of attachment, aversion, and everything else that kind of sparks off of the three poisons: attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So there's one aspect of mind which is just this kind of, cognitive, reactive kind of sphere. There's an aspect of mind which is also self-aware, right? It's awareness. It includes awareness itself. And there's also an aspect of mind which is spacious awareness. It's reflexive awareness that is able to be cognizant of everything that arises. And it's this aspect of mind which can feel large and vast and expansive, right? It can feel like self. It can feel like, I think if we wanted to use like, some kind of, Judeo-Christian term, it could probably feel like some kind of divinity. It could, it's beyond time, perhaps, beyond space. Right? This thing is the thing that is this knowing quality. Right? So it's not necessarily that it's a fifth skandha, right? But when we feel into this through our Vipassana practice, and I want to be careful not to kind of like seed the cloud, so to speak, too much. This is something that we all need to be able to experience into in our own practice. But what is the difference between thought activity and awareness? Thoughts can be provoked, right? Or I could say, Pain is crazy. He asks crazy questions. Why is he always asking crazy questions? Right? And that will trigger a response. And Pain has his response. Right? And then where is that response? And is there any difference, I think we could ask, between the response and awareness? If awareness is experienced as spacious, what's the difference between, or rather not what's the difference, but is there a difference between awareness and space? How are space and awareness the same? How are space and awareness different? So I'm just going to answer this question with another question, and it's really, can you apply the practice of Vipassana to that question? Melissa writes that when we have very strong emotions during Mahamudra, do we treat it as a thought and then apply the antidote of don't think to that? So, there are a couple things in this question I want to address. So strong emotions, so it's important to recognize that I think, that Mahamudra, so a thought it is not the only material that Mahamudra addresses. Emotions are included, right? And I think a lot of this is just kind of like like cultural conceptual difference. There's not necessarily a tremendous difference between thought and emotion, in the tradition itself, right? Um, so emotion becomes on the table just as much as thought, right? And one of the reasons why it should be on the table is so that we don't preference one over the other, right? It's not that Mahamudra only treats thought. And then when emotion arises, we're like, yeah, whatever, it's not thought, that's emotion. We want to be able to kind of bring Mahamudra to everything, right? With respect to this kind of second part of this question, so do you apply the antidote of don't think to that? So there's also not necessarily a don't think aspect to this. So, when I read the question, the first thing I thought of was imagine sitting in front of a pond or a small lake. Imagine that the water is so still, right? And that you have a pebble in your hand and you throw it at the pond or the small lake. The water is totally glass-like, and then it goes plop, and then watch the ripples. And that's what the practice is. It's watching the ripples. There's no, assessment of the difference between the way the ripples are in the beginning, right? When that rock gets tossed in, the ripples tend to be rather close to one another, and then as they move outward, right, they space out, they become much more subtle until there may or may not be a point where there is no ripple. Right? So without getting kind of wrapped up in all of the, wave frequency, like, that we find in physics, and without getting wrapped up in that, we just sit and let the ripples occur. Right? And so with Mahamudra, it's the same thing. There's no remedy other than just letting everything happen in an unimpeded way. This is the thing that causes us to have to let go of the analytic mind. Because the analytic mind is the thing that wants to think, it wants to know, it wants to see, it wants to compare, it wants to determine what comes after this thought. What's the next thing? Right? But the practice is more akin to just spacious observation. We don't need to get wrapped up in the mechanics of like the thought activity. We don't even need to say anything generally about what should happen next. So this is why like Tilopa's nails can be really hard, right? Because let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of any idea of the present, right? If we take those three, there's a lot of active letting go. And at first, it feels like somebody just used the term recently in a meeting, that it feels like the door gets shut. Door shut to the past, door shut to the future. Like doors around the conceptual analysis of the present get shut. Right? It might feel good to shut the door, but eventually, we do this with the doors wide open in practice. So no, even though the door is wide open, nothing comes from the past. We don't worry about how everything extends outward to the future. And even with the doors open to every single conceptual possibility for the present, we leave those doors open, but don't chase. Yeah, in one way, it's like Tilopa's 6 nails in the sense that they're nails that fix us to this spot. But it's kind of like an illusory nail going into an illusory piece of wood. Like there's nothing really there. Nothing there. Nothing there. So I don't know if that helps, but if we can practice this without practicing, do without doing, apply antidotes when the antidote itself is just space. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know if it's not. Yay, okay, wonderful. Yeah, this very awkward kind of platform of crowdcast. I have no idea what's going on, ever. That's what makes it fun. So we did looking at the moving mind, but just to kind of like sum up, yes, all about the letting go, which is not easy, especially for us really smart people whose minds are just like so brilliant and amazing that, they'll sit and philosophize until the cows come home. And Mahamudra is not about that. And, I think the thing that I find so relieving is this, some of the kind of very short biographies of Tilopa. He was a cowherd, right? He didn't know anything about philosophy. So if he didn't know about it, like, why do I need to know about it? That's kind of where I go with this. Like, some people can go to grad school and study X, Y, and Z and get all intense about it. That's great, and I celebrate that. And I can't do that, don't want to do that, because Tilopa gave us a really good example, and he, was relatively uneducated, unschooled. Yes, it's hard to really just relax sometimes. Yes, and I've I've trained hard. I've trained hard to look like this, Kyle. And so Payne asks if it's too analytical to ask how this differs from the experience of the Alaya. So let's hold off on that because we're only a little bit into Vipassana. So we should get into Vipassana. We should let Vipassana practice take root, before we, get too heavily into this kind of deep analysis. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. So, Ninth Karmapa says that, in looking at the moving mind, we should do exactly what we do with respect to the still mind, come into meditation posture, allow yourself to relax, let your mind rest loose and relaxed within faultless stillness, so no pressure. And again, it is said that Vipassana should be done after there's some element of stability of mind, through shamatha. So, it doesn't mean we need to be masters of shamatha and sit, for hours and hours. But we should have some stability of mind. And so, he points out that we should either give rise to a particular thought or just let one, happen as it does. And then to look very gently at the nature of the thought that's occurred. When it arises, Does it arise with a color or a shape? And as you look, the text itself says to look in a disinterested way. But what we're looking to do is to look in a way that is non-analytical, right? So again, just like when we throw that pebble right into the lake or the pond, and we just sit and watch. Right? We're not like sitting and watching in a state of stupidity. We're sitting and watching and just observing, noticing, but not analyzing, just letting it go. Right? So look in that manner at the nature of the movement of thought, how it rises, what it is like as it arises, where it is, and then where does it go? Karmapa goes on to say that there are many kinds of thoughts that arise, thoughts that are kleshas, the three poisons and so forth. And you can either just let them happen, or you can provoke them. But as you do, just look into them. What is... so, like, I'll speak from, like, experience. At times, not today, but, about a week ago, I just found this experience of COVID just so tiring. It's like, we're still here. It's been going on for so long. Having my own response to all this, right? And so resting into that feeling of just low energy. How does that impulse arise? What is it like when it's experienced? Where does it go? Just like watching, imagine, so today's the Losar, it's the year of the metal ox. So imagine that you're a shepherd. And I think this is also why, maybe Talopo was never a shepherd, and the shepherd kind of metaphor is very useful for the purpose of meditation. But imagine just watching, you're a shepherd and you're just watching your animals. Just watching, letting them wander. You can be very focused on ensuring there are no predators around, that they're safe, without getting all conceptual, right? All you're doing is observing, right? And so to observe the thought activity. What is the difference between the thought and any object that might arise? So, just kind of a little nod to Hallmark, Sunday is Valentine's Day, right? So is there any kind of, relationship or difference than somebody for whom we might feel love and the love that we feel, and experiencing that? What is the difference between that and your mind before you had looked at that which you love? Before and after. What is the nature of that mind like? When you look at these thoughts that arise, are these thoughts empty and free from complexity, beyond birth and cessation? Or when you look at them, do the thoughts that have arisen come and go without leaving a trace? No thought chemtrails. No thought, like a slug, like the slime, the slug or a snail will leave. Or are the thoughts that arise self-liberated and luminous, naked insight without being identified as anything? Like bubbles, they rise and maybe form a little bit on the surface of water and pop. Where are they? Where do they go after that? If they are self-liberated, luminous, naked insight without being able to be identified as anything, then is there a difference between the previous luminous, naked insight that occurred during stillness and the luminous, naked insight that occurs while looking at thoughts in this moment? If the thoughts that arise without being identified as something, look at whether or not there's an object that you are thinking of, and whether or not it's identified as something. As you look at the nature of thought and of that thought activity, especially as that arises suddenly, a thought not quote unquote corrupted by anything, right, by mental activity. Does its arising and liberation occur simultaneously or not? When the thought happens, what happens? And again, Karmapa reminds us, look until you have complete certainty in your being regarding those extraordinary ways of experiencing. So look until you have the answer. So that's looking at the moving mind in a nutshell, just in case. Maybe that is something that somebody needs to be reminded of. So right now, we're going to look at the next section, which is looking at the mind while there are appearances. Just check the time. Okay, good. About half an hour. So again, and maybe you can do this. So adopt the points of the body with respect to meditation. So, get as comfortable as you can in your meditation posture. It doesn't have to be perfect. If laying down feels good, then go ahead and do that. Our bodies are all different. And again, this is not about force. And Mahamudra is not about force. And then for this, it helps to have some kind of object in your visual field. So sit as comfortably as you can. Allow yourself to have a gaze that's open, wide. And allow this open, wide gaze to focus on a suitable object, something in front of you. The examples that Karmapa gives are mostly things that I do not have in my field of vision right now. A vase, a wall, a mountain, or a house. I have a bookshelf. And so I'm just going to use one of the books on that shelf. And just use what is directly in front of you. It could be a Dharma item, it doesn't have to be. And just look at it. Allow yourself to look at it as if we've thrown that pebble right into the lake or the pond, and the ripples are just going. You're just beholding this object without getting too wrapped up about size, condition, like or dislike. And if you can, try and cut the root of any conceptual elaboration. Just look. And Karmapa goes on to say that similarly, you can look at a form listen to sound, you can engage with aroma or smell, engage in taste, or an object of touch. Any object of the five senses, and consider its nature, its color, its shape, its arising, its ceasing, and dwelling. With regard to sickness, suffering, heat, or cold, and everything, look, experience this thing, and cut the root. And Karmapa asks, when you look in this way, does the appearance cease? Are you and the appearance perceived as different? Does the appearance arise toward the mind? Or does the mind grasp out towards the appearance, thinking, there, over there is appearance? Are the mind and appearance inseparable? Is that vivid as appearance emptiness without an object? Look. When you look at the object, if it is clearly out there, is there the thought that it is clearly out there? Or without thinking that it is really out there, is it that the object does not cease but arises freshly in each moment? And does the mind that looks at it not grasp at it? Does it remain relaxed? And like a child seeing a shrine room, not even think, these two are neither the same nor different. Just look and sever the root. So when you look, what is the experience like? Do you think I am here and that object is there? What really happens? Is any of this making sense? Or at least clear? I don't know about making sense. That's not necessarily so much the point right now. Or did I die? Maybe I died. Yeah. Okay, good. Just make sure it's clear, right? So this is about direct experience of things, right? How do things arise? So sound, just take sound for a second. Yes, appearance and object are used as cinnamon. They're used as cinnamon, and I like to make apple pie with it. Synonyms. Yes, appearance is a term for visual phenomena which include objects, including cinnamon. Yeah, well, the arising, receiving, Anjana. This is really about intimacy, isn't it? I like using that word. There is no separation. In this experience of no separation, where is the room for fear? Right? No over there and over here. Part of our problem, or quote unquote problem, right, is that we've been so conditioned for there's me, as a thing, going through life, experiencing other things, seeing things. It's almost like absurd, right? To be like, that thing is over there, I am over here. you know. Or on some level, we do it rather innately, um, because there's still this idea of me as a separate being. But when we really allow our practice to kind of, bring us into direct experience of appearance, there's really nothing to fight over. There's nothing to grab after. Yes. So first, I want to address Veronica, your point. So yeah. So when you begin asking those questions, it seems to create separation, or when you just look, there seems to be less separation. This really has a lot to do with, and I'm really glad you're bringing this up, because it's common. Um, because Vipassana sometimes ends up being approached from the perspective of that kind of questioning inquiry. And rather than engage language, if we can engage in the experience and an inquiring awareness with being, just with being, without words. The words, unfortunately, are needed because I don't have the ability to transmit mentally, right? So I need to use language. And Karmapa, when he wrote this, ninth Karmapa, wrote this with the intent of transferring meaning. Third Karmapa in his Mahamudra aspiration prayer, indicates, and many other people do. Saraha does this, Maitripa does this, Tilopa does this. They all point out that you can't, words and concepts cannot convey this, right? And so here we're beginning to we're kind of right on the edge of being able to appreciate how words really get in the way, right? But when we sit and practice into it, then it becomes very clear that this kind of, distinction between ourselves and objects of appearance, not only visual, but smell and taste and hearing in particular. We can't, it's not about distance, right? The moment everything is experienced, so here's a useful thing to consider. Where does the meeting of appearance and awareness occur? Right? Is it right at the surface of the object? Is it halfway? It's not halfway through. That's weird. Like, meet me halfway. It's very strange. It's instantaneous. Instantaneous meeting. How amazing, right? Why I bring this up, Veronica, is that if we can hold the words very lightly, like, like seagulls trying to walk on a frozen lake, not leaving footprints, not leaving marks. We just want to have these things, just this self-reflective, not self, but able to recognize itself, view itself, the mind able to view itself kind of experience. That helps. Yeah, I don't like words either. So Anjana then says, yes, exactly what I'm feeling. Looking at a little wooden painting of a lotus, and the lotus is not a lotus, but it's just itself over and over. And this is because I'm beholding it, and I'm able to behold because it is itself. It is itself. Yes, it's making so sense. Yeah, no, it's, this is that question about where does that happen, right? Where does awareness and the object of appearance meet? That is a really nice question. Sound. So when we bring all of these in, right? So there's the visual consciousness aspect, right? Appearance. And then that's form, then there's sound, smell, taste, and touch. If we were to engage all of those at one time right now, so engaging smell where you are, smell your surroundings. Listen. Feel the ambient temperature. Feel the clothes on your body. Behold all the form around you. In that moment, how does all of that arise? Are we able to experience it directly? As we do this, is there anything to leave out? As we rest in this way, is there any fear? Does everything just arise? Or do you have to apply effort and meet it somewhere? Where do you meet it? Where is the edge of the experience? Or is there an edge? So how is that feeling to people? thoughts or feelings. And how is it curious? Year after year on the monkey's face, a monkey's face. What did that feel like for people? Yeah, so Carl says, instantaneous union of object and observer. Yes. Have been experimenting with recognizing the inquiring mind itself as the union of that experience. Curious, and then I'm open to learning more each moment with each question. Anjana, is it a little like watching fireworks in the sky, like you see it bursts in the sky and then another, and then another, and then another, and then each other. It's just fresh, it has its own wonder. It's like being in the ocean. Yeah. So these are all very good. Felt like many things then melded into air sort of feeling. Melissa writes, it is easier to do this with objects rather than sentient beings. Is it the same process? What is a sentient being? I mean, we're all appearance. I think I was actually scrolling through Facebook quite a bit today because it is Losar, and I have a lot of friends out in India and Nepal, and then this is the time to really kind of be in touch and whatnot. And there's a really great quote somebody posted attributed to Gyaltsen Rinpoche, and it was about how easy it is to see flaws in other people, right? And that it's almost easier to see flaws in other people than it is to directly engage our own kind of critical voice. So we're just like, oh, there's so and so, I don't like them, and blah blah blah, all that stuff, right? And so I guess the question is can we put all that stuff down and do this practice with people? I mean, imagine being in a room of 12 people and just doing this. At the end of the day, appearance is appearance, right? Sound is sound. So when we do this, we might hear people moving, shifting, breathing, coughing, doing all this stuff, farting, all the stuff that people do in meditation rooms, right? All of this is about is resting into being in the moment with appearance, both appearance that arises as form, appearance that arises as sound, appearance that arises as taste, touch, etc. It's the same process. There's no difference between a human being and a brick. There's no difference between a brick and somebody you love. There's no difference between somebody you love and a lake. There's no difference between a lake and somebody you hate. There's no difference between somebody you hate and somebody you love. All of it begins to be, the thing that there's no inherent external difference, right? Other than whatever kind of, judgment we're going to place on it. That's the power of our reactivity. The way that we give birth to and kill off people, just like that. Right? We kill them off by not giving them the space, not taking them seriously, not listening, not letting them be. We birth people by making such a big deal. Oh, there's so and so. It's all appearance. I've been in some situations with some of my teachers where I will let their kind of attendants know that I'm on my way to come visit. Let's say I already go to Sikkim next month. I would let the monastery know, and they would know roughly when to expect me. But usually when I show up, my teacher's just like, "Oh, you're here." There's no big like, "Oh, let me give a hug and blah blah." It's just, you know, it's I could have come in the day before or whatever. Like there's not a lot of big deal to it. But humans, for most of us, are far more triggering. Let's see. The experience is more clear and obvious. It's Shane, Sam. I really like thinking about these things through questions because I feel like the form of a question itself helps me loosen up and hold the questions rather than try to answer it, if that makes sense. Yeah, it sure does. There's not really one necessary. There's not a 100% proper way of doing this. It's the entire thing is a contemplative exercise that is rooted in the experience of meditation. So that if the question helps, that's good. Travis writes, as long as the thoughts about how I'm missing it are regarded as part of the same display as the wall or my clothing, then it feels good. Otherwise, there's a feeling of frustration. And so when frustration arises, directly experience frustration. When that turns to anger, then directly experience anger. The beauty of all of this is that we're never going to end up in a situation where any of these experiences is permanent. Yes. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. So we'll walk through the day like that. Me, 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 me. Check my phone. Me, 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 me. Check my other phone. Me, 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 me. All the time. Talk on the phone. Me. What's for dinner? Me. It's crazy. Right? But then, so why this is so powerful and so amazing is that when we're just basically staring at a wall of books, there are so many different kinds. There are big books and little books and thick books and thin books and hard books and soft books and good books and shitty books and all sorts of things. And it's not just books. There's all sorts of clutter too. There's like clutter everywhere, right? And so it's just being present with the expression of my mind as a bookshelf covered in crap, and just resting into that thing. Resting in direct experience, resting into that unified experience where there is no difference between seer and seen. I find it particularly powerful if we bring everything in, if we bring atmospheric temperature, sound, light, color, taste, touch. And directly experience. Just letting it happen. And gaining confidence in what is happening. Gaining confidence in the experience. And I can't stress enough, in that moment, and I'm just going to ask, like, where is fear? Where is anxiety? As you rest into an experience of more unified presence, where is the fear? So, Brian, I'm not sure I could have this experience if the thing I was focused on was not the plant in my window, but someone trying to break through my window, though. Yes. And why do we go there? Like, well, like, it's so funny. This is like the perennial problem with, I don't know, with the fear of letting go is, why do we wonder? Well, I don't know. Like, this is wonderful, but I'm saying this with complete love, Brian. Like, you know, what if like three ninjas kicked in the door to this room with swords? How would I feel then? I would be scared. you like, I would be scared. Um, you know, yeah. So I like the letting it all go, just letting it go, coming back just to the practice now. Not, what would happen then if like the North Koreans happen to launch a nuclear missile at Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Just resting. Letting go of fear. So Cordelia writes, can you share any words about how we can return to a state of resting, a state of less grasping, when there's actually an acute danger, not just imagine the possibility of danger? Um, yes. Uh, so of course, danger is possible. Usually, at times when we don't necessarily expect it. Um, However, in the experience of being kind of right on that edge, what I'm not suggesting is people should go out and kind of put themselves in dangerous situations. Right? But what we're looking to do is to kind of break this reactivity, right? Break the habit of projecting onto everything that we experience, because all it is like or dislike. And that's why the profundity of addressing the three poisons: attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Attachment pulls, aversion pushes, and ignorance is really about the way that we're misapprehending everything. These are the root. So, in the experience of fear, what we're really doing is sometimes it can be, there's a visual, right? So, fear, we can experience tremendous fear and lack of safety in a secure place. Right? And so at that point, then it's really about, when we're doing it under those circumstances, it's the body. Right? So when our body is sending us those messages, fear, resting into that and asking, where is the fear? Where is it? Can you find it in your body? what is the feeling of fear? Where is that? Is there any difference between the experience of fear and the experience of mind when we're not feeling fear? Where does fear go? How does it arise? When it arises, is it able to be self-liberated in the moment? And that's the way we use fear, again, as another way of coming back to understanding the nature of mind, the nature of fear. I've done this like after responding to crises in crisis situations where people are injured, right? And there's a lot of kind of induced emotion as a result of that. Somebody, assaulted, or somebody who's been gone through like a major trauma and responding to that, right? And you it can feel a little bit like you're a sponge, right? Kind of like, it's not that like you're soaking up another person's experience, but more when you're dealing with somebody who's experiencing a heightened trauma, right? That has a way of just kind of energetically triggering us to have a similar kind of experience. Is it the same experience? No, but it's kind of our own version of it. If we have a history of trauma, then that's a really easy way to kind of, re-traumatize yourself, or to can activate, the experience of vicarious trauma. Noticing that when that arises is the first part of it. And then coming back to what is the difference in terms of experience. What this kind of, larger section about, in terms of looking at the mind in relationship to experience, right, is really rooted in or learning how to distill the wisdom about the nature of appearance. Take care, Kyle. Right. Engaging with appearance that's terrifying, appearance that's disturbing, appearance that's challenging. So we could put like, a nice big screen on and play really messed up imagery, right? And to rest into that. Now, we don't have to do that because we're intense. We don't have to do that. It's not about like, it's definitely not about just some grotesque kind of, spiritual calisthenics, right? We do it, when that's appropriate. And, that might not be appropriate for a while for some of us. Or, we may have things that are just way too triggering that's, not worth necessarily kind of, practicing with at this point. Right? But at some point you'll be able to. Like, that is, I'm pretty certain that that's inevitable. Fear is just so funny, right? Because like, it sometimes it just creeps up. We're just like hanging out. All of a sudden we can feel fear. It's just like, what is that about? Right? And so when, with this particular kind of set of instructions and looking at the mind in relationship to appearance really helps us to cut through any sense of separation between all of the phenomena through which we move all the time. We're intimately connected. And I challenge everybody to kind of find that point where, appearance and awareness meet. It would be kind of interesting if we could. It's a shame, this is all virtual, because it'd be kind of funny to everybody like make a diorama where like appearance and awareness meets, and just to see what that's like. Yeah, and so we could do the same thing with pain, with loss. I mean, people we love who we've lost. The feeling, it's not about getting rid of the feeling of tenderness. It's not about getting rid of these complex emotions. It's about really understanding them as they arise. It's about relinquishing fear. But not because, we have to let it go so that it dies. It evaporates. It evaporates. So anyway, I really want to well, I'm just going back to Travis's comment. On the other hand, it's more intense when at a concert or with a loved one or some special moment when you don't want to miss. Easier on the cushion, looking at the wall. It is, and yet there's a certain point, and I don't mean this about you, Travis, but for all of ourselves, like there's a certain point where we have to confront that seeming difference. Right? And that means that we need to kind of say, you know what, man, like I am noticing a discrepancy between these things. Like I need to take responsibility for my practice and take this off the cushion a bit. Get real. And again, when we do that, doesn't mean we need to like go find someone running around the city with a machete and be like, oh, okay, there's a guy who scares the shit out of me. Let me just like see what happens, But again, to just ride the subway if there's a subway run or a bus, to sit in a park, sit on a park bench. People will move by you. Go to a library. Restaurants are slowly opening up in New York. Sit in a restaurant. There's all this invisible virus in the air. Engage that. But above all else, everyone please be safe. So I'm going to pause here. And then next week we're going to look at the instruction on looking at the body and mind as same or different. So thank you all very much. Before I leave, I just want to dedicate the merit to today's session. Any wisdom or any fresh, liberating experience that may have been triggered by today's teaching. And we dedicate this to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. May each one of the practitioners who came to this session, may they be able to experience their mind as deep and vast and loving and limitless. May this, the Lunar New Year, Losar, the year of the metal ox, be a year filled with love, filled with healing, filled with justice, filled with deep practice and realization. May every moment be experienced as Mahamudra. May every moment be perfect. May love abound. And may you all be well. Take care of yourselves and have a lovely new year. And I'll see you soon. Oh my gosh, are there questions here? Oh, phew. Thank you, Libra. Thank you, Libra. And thank you, Libra. Love to you all. Be well. Bye-bye.